All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast. I am joined today, my first in-house guest in the new studio. I'm excited. I've been wanting to do one in person in the new studio for a long time. This is my first one. I've got a good friend of mine, Mr. Kip Etter, and we talk about literally everything under the sun. We go from influential people in our lives to crazy people in our towns to raising crazy kids and grandkids to talking summer prep. And Kip goes on a massive rant about social media and the world that we live in that's just constantly attacking hunters. Guys, it's a fun episode. I can promise you that if you don't like the topic, fast forward for about 30 seconds and we change topics and talk about K-State football even. I don't know how that come about. I told Kip specifically, don't talk about K-State football, but he did. So we talk about everything. We talk about literally anything that pops in our head. So if you don't like it, fast forward about 30 seconds. I always joke when I'm preaching, say, if you don't like it, come back next week. I'll preach about something different. Same with this podcast. If you don't like it, fast forward a minute and a half and we'll be on a new topic. Guys, as always, this episode is brought to you by our phenomenal friends over at ScentLock. Go check them out as you gear up for fall. The BE1 series, the Bow Hunter Elite series, has an entire toolkit built for bow hunters by bow hunters. So go check out ScentLock as you get ready for this fall. But let's dive in and have some fun.
With over 90 years of innovation, Bear Archery continues pushing toward the goal of founder Fred Bear, making archery accessible for all. Fred believed the history of the bow and arrow were the history of mankind, and everyone should immerse themselves in the outdoor experience. Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast, where the mission is simple: to hunt, grow, and inspire others.
Guys, I'm a big believer in prioritizing your feet. Your feet should always be a priority, and you should always be considering what's on your feet. If you're in the mountains and you've got blisters and hot spots, you are not going to go as far. You're not going to make it to that next ridge. You're not going to stay on the mountain as long. Ultimately, you're not going to be as successful. If you're sitting in a whitetail stand and your feet are freezing, you're going to get more jittery. You're not going to be as still. You're not going to be as quiet. You're not going to stay as long. Ultimately, you're not going to be able to kill that big buck in the dead of winter. If you're chasing antelope, you've got to be able to be quick and quiet and fast and have comfortable feet. Guys, no matter what you're chasing, no matter the pursuit, no matter the game, your feet should be a priority. I have fallen in love with Schnee boots. I didn't even know how normal hot spots and blisters were in my life until I got a good pair of boots, because I was probably a lot like you. I would run to a Cabela's Bass Pro and I would buy a pair of $100 boots thinking that I was saving money. But those boots break down faster, and I got to keep buying boots. So, guys, don't let a pair of $400 boots keep you from buying good boots, because in the long run, those $100 boots, they add up. Whereas if you spend good money on a good pair of Italian-made, handcrafted boot, they're going to last you for 10, 15 years. They're going to be way more comfortable. You're going to be more successful. Your feet will be more comfortable. You will thank me later. So, guys, go check out schnees.com for all of your boots. That's SCHNEES.com. The best boots on planet Earth, Schnee boots. Go check them out. Thank me later. But, guys, start prioritizing your feet and get yourself a good pair of boots. So how's life, bro? We're already going. We might as well just jump in.
Life's amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah. Perspective. Keep it in perspective. Put the Lord in front and you're there.
There you go. So Kip Etter, owner of Powder and String Outfitters, my hometown shop, your hometown shop. Every time I go in there, I'm just absolutely amazed by the atmosphere that you've created. And now that hometown shop feel, great prices, massive selection is available online, powderandstring.com. Got to pay the bills somehow. So there you go. So guys, go check out Powder and String Outfitters. You can do all of your gun shopping online. I made it my mission. I found a Ruger 1022, which everybody in the world needs, because it's just the perfect gun.
Yeah, or needs more than one of.
Yeah, or needs more than one of. Cheap to shoot, fun to shoot. Coon killing machine. Just an awesome little gun. Everybody needs one. And so I made it my mission. I'm like, I wonder if I can find a gun cheaper. I wonder if I can find
Less
that gun.
expensive. I don't like the word cheap.
Sorry. I wonder if I can find that gun less expensive anywhere else. And so I Googled everywhere, even like the black web, even like the dark places of the web where you can buy guns.
You went deep.
And I couldn't find the gun anywhere cheaper. So I was like, man.
Less expensive.
But if I'm talking cheaper about the
Nothing. I don't like the word cheap at all. It makes you feel cheap. It makes the product feel cheap.
I am cheap.
No, you're not.
And easy.
Budget.
At least that's what they said in high school.
Budget.
I'm budget friendly.
There you go. I don't know. I had in a previous life, if you will, I had a sales manager, and his Mark Tatum, we called him Big Papa, and he was, and I'm not exaggerating, this guy, the man, the myth, the legend. He was a heavyweight wrestler at OU. I'm going to say, a standing weight on feet, everyday weight was he was a 6 foot tall, probably 385. Oh. And I mean, his fingers were like this big.
Yeah.
Still real good friend of mine, very good friend of mine. But Papa was my sales manager, and I'm learning, to sell. At that time I was in my previous life, I had an insurance investment company. I was selling life insurance, and life insurance is very tough to sell. And so I kept using the word cheap. And finally we were in a sales meeting, like literally at a kitchen table with this family. And I knew them kind of, and he asked me before we went in, how do you know these people? I was just getting started. So, you kind of lean on people that but I had moved to Phoenix, Arizona, so I didn't know anybody. So I kind of knew these people through somebody, so barely knew them. But for me in Phoenix, I knew them. That's about the best people I knew.
Right.
So he had already told me a couple of times, quit using the word cheap. So I say the word cheap once in the sales, at the table with these people. He kind of kicks me underneath the table, trying to help me.
Yeah.
And the third time I said it, I kid you not, Papa just backhanded right in my chest, just thunk. And I have never used the word cheap ever again.
All right. Well, so you might just have to hit me then. I don't know.
I'm not a violent person. Papa was
a violent person.
Well, he got his point across, and to this day, that was a long time ago.
Speaking of violent, one of my favorite things on planet Earth is 0% vegan. It's in stock live, typicalsportsman.com. I get a lot of questions about it, so that's where you find it. I guess people are Googling like Bear Archery podcast apparel or Cook Wild apparel. Go to typicalsportsman.com. It's right there. You can purchase it. Dude, we had a lot of fun today. Tucker was wanting to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to go.
I can go anywhere with him.
Life insurance wasn't hard to sell to me. Like, as soon as Tucker was born and started running the world, I'm like, I need some life insurance.
Smart move. Love that kid.
So he's like, I want to go catch crawdads. I'm like, yeah, you do. Perfect. Let's roll. Mm-hmm. And so this little nasty creek that runs right between our houses, we go back there and we catch some crawdads. So we spent probably 3 hours down in the creek just catching crawdads. And I was thinking, like, as I was doing it, I was like, this is doing a lot of good for him as a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that like it's a stretch, and I want to do a full kind of like video on this, like the idea behind that, because like, no, it's not teaching him like stalking skills or tracking skills or bow hunting skills, but it's teaching him the patience and like, we might not find what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's teaching him like, don't get distracted because he's like, well, snail. And I'm like, but we're looking for crawdads.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking, I'm like, those are the same issues we faced when we were deer hunting. Because he'd be like, oh, look, Dad, let's go play with this. I'm like, no, we're here to look for deer.
Right.
And so I just want to like encourage the listener, get your kids outdoors just to do something.
Absolutely.
Like
100%.
when I was Tucker's age, dude, my dad, we would just go do anything we could think of.
Yeah.
Whether we liked it or not, like just to be outdoors, dove hunting or quail hunting, whatever, catching crawdads. Like I can remember just days of catching crawdads.
Oh, yes, for sure. I can totally relate to that.
And his idea was, we don't have a bucket, so I'm going to let it pinch me and it'll just hold on to me until we get back.
And how'd that work out?
We found a bucket pretty quick.
Did he have pockets? Because you can put them in your pockets, but then sometimes that can go sideways.
Yeah. No. So how this all came about, we just let the kids go off and ride their bike, and they were out having fun, and they come back with a bucket full of stuff, shells, rocks, and a crawdad. I'm like, dude, you caught a crawdad. And he's like, I love it too.
Mm-hmm.
So that night he's like, can we go back? I'm like, sure, let's go back. So we caught a few more. But today we went deep. Like we went all the way through the creeks, flipping every rock.
Did you find any leeches?
No, well, not yet.
I did that one time over at the city park. And I don't remember the whole extent of the story, but I do remember that my mom was ready to go and I was down the creek, whatever. I don't know. I was catching snakes or fish or something. I don't know. Crawdads, whatever. And I came up out of the creek and
covered in leeches.
Oh, yeah. And that didn't work for me. I don't like to this day. Obviously, I'm not a big fan.
One of my most listened to and commented on podcasts is called The Redneck Ninja. And it's with this young man. He's probably, I'm going to guess 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept hearing stories about this kid. He's one of my buddy's kids, and I just kept hearing stories about him. And I'm like, I want to have this kid on the podcast. He just loves to hunt and fish. And he had a video just go absolutely viral.
Yeah.
He caught a possum by the back of the neck, took it inside, and it's like growling and snarling everywhere. And,
right.
And his mom said, "Oh, it's alive." And he said, "Well, yeah, it's alive, Mom. It's a possum."
Yeah.
And just like millions of views.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I think I've seen that one.
I just dug into this kid, and his dad, I grew up good friends with his dad, and we ended up going out bow fishing before we recorded just so I could like learn who this kid was.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got another video that kind of went viral. There's a jug out in the middle of his pond at his house, and it takes off. And he's like, "I got a fish." And he just sprints into the pond, just like
right
redneck Baywatch it, dude.
Yeah.
Dives in, grabs that jug, comes out with a big old catfish, but he's just covered in leeches. So then the next video is his mom just picking off leeches.
Yeah.
And fun episode. Go back and listen to it. Redneck Ninja. I don't know. It was a long time back, but it's a fun episode. He's wild. Jude is his name.
Yeah. No, that's the best way. I mean, growing up, that was the same way. I'm born and raised I was born here in Wellington, but raised in Mayfield, America. That's what I always tell people, but
6 miles north of Rome.
Oh, Kelly Carter.
I want to get Kelly on super bad.
He's the number one on our podcast.
I know he is.
We've had more downloads by far. Like, it's not even close.
I can't wait till I have my own guy to sit behind the computer and run sound for me.
It's not all it's cracked up to be.
That guy sucks. Am I right? Yeah, Kip does have his own podcast, Powder and String Outfitters. Go check it out. And I would highly encourage you to go listen to the Kelly Carter episode. I get comments all the time, like from my friends, like, "Dude, why have you never introduced me to Kelly?" And I'm like, try to hide him.
He's notorious.
He's the notorious. I try to hide him from people.
The notorious Kelly Carter. Kelly Carter is they broke the mold with him for sure. And I owe a lot of who I am today to him.
It's not a good thing.
I'm not ashamed to say it. He's a good
I wouldn't be either. My mom came into town and Kelly walked right up to her and I was like, "Oh no, where's
this could go anywhere.
This could go anyway." And I think he asked her something about, "Do you catch coyotes or something?" She's like, "No, I don't." But that was like the first question he asked, like, "So you catch coyotes too?"
He's a unique character. Yeah. And he's
nothing else to say.
Words you can't explain. There's no words out there. Like you just got to go listen to it. And like you said, I've got people
and it's real. Like
there's not made up at all.
People think like he's putting on this like mantra. Like,
no. Well,
real.
The closest thing I can describe him to is, Swamp People, the one on History Show, Shelby.
Coyotes.
No, there was Shelby. Did you ever watch Shelby on History Channel?
I watched like the first few seasons, and I don't know.
Then he had this Shelby. He had his own like spinoff, and he had his own, and he was like he had this boat that he would like just go absolutely crazy on, and he would like just like, "Oh man," and he just would say stuff. And the closest thing, so at that point in time, this has been like 15 years ago that all kind of played out on the History Channel. I was living in Phoenix still with my wife and the kids. We hadn't moved back home yet. And
so the kids didn't know.
They didn't know
Carter.
Kelly. No.
Okay.
And then since obviously they've all got to know Kelly real well.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's even coached Nick in baseball and everything. So I'm telling my wife, I'm like, you know, she's heard all these stories about this guy because he's just, I mean, he's a legend. I mean, he really is in the area. I mean, and beyond. But he's just so out there and crazy. And so I'm like, this show comes on. I'm like, the best thing I can describe is this guy right here. That's Kelly Carter, but Kelly is the real life. Like, I don't know if I'm assuming that Shelby guy is probably pretty close to that, but I'm like, they could do a show on Kelly and you'd get the same result.
And crush it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, our podcast, I mean, it's, I can't even tell. I don't know. I haven't looked at it lately, but it's
leaps and bounds above every other episode.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I even get like, I'll be on the phone with my friends and they'll say a Kelly Carter term, and I'm like, where'd you hear that from? Like, friends from Arkansas, and they're like, dude, I saw you share a podcast with this guy, and
yeah, or
I picked up his terms.
We'll be walking, like, you know, we're on Main Street downtown, and just completely out of the blue, like Kelly will come in, you know, the shop sometimes. He doesn't. I mean, he's not in all the time or anything by any means.
Right.
Him and my dad, obviously, him and my dad were best friends. They're still our best friends. They come in to the door, our restaurant and bar, and play pool on Wednesday afternoons for like an hour. And I'll walk out with him, and all of a sudden you just have, like, a while back, a trash truck is going down the street, and there's some kid working in the trash truck, and all of a sudden he just goes, "Whoop." And I just turned and looked at Kelly, and he just started laughing, and like, it's like an immediate reaction. He immediately is like, it's like a sound machine. He goes, "Boom," just does the, you know, the whole noise that he does. And
Tucker was riding his dirt bike around the house not too long ago, and Kelly pulls up, and so Tucker drives up and says, "Hey, Mr. Carter," and Kelly says, "Well, why don't you show me your material?" And Tucker had no idea what he meant, and I'm like, that means like ride for him, like,
yeah.
And then for like a week, Tucker walked around to everybody, and what was funny is, like, he said it in the most redneck way he could.
Yeah,
but he'd walk around to everybody and say, "Show me your material," and I'm like, Tucker, that doesn't make sense unless, like, they're doing
it's
something
completely out of
like,
context. Yeah, and it could be.
You can't just walk up to somebody at church and say, "Show me your material, dude.
Yeah.
We're gonna get the cops here."
Right, exactly. Yeah, but it works for Kelly.
It does, and I don't know how.
I love that man. He's a legend. Yeah, and I owe so much to him for introducing me to hunting, and I've talked about it in length on our podcast, but, you know, going coyote hunting with him and I learned so much outdoor stuff from him and all that. But, you know, where I was going with that, or before we got to talking about Kelly, which we could spend an entire podcast talking about it. But, I grew up in Mayfield, America, and it's 3 blocks by 3 blocks if you count the cats and dogs, and 100 people. It's 3 blocks by 3 blocks and 100 people if you count the cats and dogs. What I would tell people in Phoenix, and they just never could believe it. And but we rode our bikes everywhere, and all these little potholes and everything. We were catching crawdads, and, you know, here I am. You know, it's, you know, we're way back before cell phones and everything, and I remember telling my mom and dad I was going to start a bait shop. I mean, Mayfield
selling crawdads.
We're going to sell crawdads and, well, worms. I also had a worm. I had a worm.
That wouldn't be too bad because Mayfield is right next to the lake.
It's a mile and a half, 2 miles.
I mean, so.
But if you're coming from town, from Wellington, it's kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
It's a half mile out of the way. But I sure gave it heck. I did. I had crawdads and minnows. We'd seine for minnows. And
how'd you keep the crawdads? Because Tucker wants to keep a couple.
So you gotta get it to where they can get out. Like, give them, you know, water, but then allow them the ability to get out. And then I would also throw a little aerator in there as well. The aerator doesn't do anything for them. I don't think.
Just like a glass.
I would use, if you had, like, just you're doing a couple of them, just a glass tank with some water, and then, but allow them to get the ability to get out because they're a mouth breather.
Yeah. So like a glass tank, just like a muddy slope, gravel
Sand,
slope,
gravel. Yeah.
with some water on one side and like some stuff to hide under on the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then they eat, you can catch them you can go out fishing with them for bacon. Get bacon, put a little bacon.
Really?
Yeah.
Those clamp onto it?
Yeah, they clamp onto it. There's been, I remember as a kid, I haven't done it for years, but I think we just would tie like a piece of bacon to like a piece of twine, you know, like to a 6-8 foot piece of twine and then just throw it in the water. And then they just would grab it with their paws. And I remember times pulling 2, 3, 4 of them out of there, 5 of them. They drop off. You got to do it kind of quick, but they'll just drop off if you don't do it pretty quick. You got to be quick, but you can't jerk, you know, you got to kind of get them up there.
Huh. Interesting.
But, you know, when I had my bait business, I was like,
Kip's bait.
It's like,
why don't you sell bait at the gun shop? Have a little fridge, sell bait.
Yeah. You know, the door used to be a bait shop, an outdoor. It's called Sportsman's Paradise.
It's called Sportsman's Door.
Sportsman's Door. Yeah.
Huh.
Sportsman's Paradise. And they sold, that's why all those pictures are on the wall of people holding fish and all that was they'd come in by their, that was back in the day. I think that was, well, I can remember when I was a kid. So we're talking in the late
50s.
I'm not that old yet. Late 80s. Late 80s, you could go in there and it was still kind of a bait shop, if you will. But anyway, back you also minnows, little minnows. They eat minnows, dead minnows. Put some minnows in there, they'll catch them and eat them. But
might have to do this.
I'm sure maybe they might eat some
like
kind of
worms or something.
Yeah, worms, anything. I don't know. Maybe they're vegetarian. I don't know, but I know that we would.
I just love that you can catch them on bacon.
Yeah.
That's that just weird knowledge that I needed.
Yeah.
Kind of like the best way to catch a gar. You know the best way to catch a gar?
Twine.
Twine, like a piece of rope.
Yeah.
Because they'll bite it, but they can't get their teeth out.
Yep.
They'll bite it instinctively.
I've never done that, but I've heard that.
We used to do it in the river in Arkansas. We catch quite a few. Because they'll bite it just like a bass will, like territorial, but then they can't get their teeth out. That's
what I've heard. I've never tried it. There's big, I mean, we have bigger ones here, nothing like down south or anything like that. But Blake, my son-in-law, he's gone bow fishing for him. He shot some big ones.
I love bow fishing. That's just basic redneck stuff. Like,
I'm a big fan.
Every redneck needs a bow fishing rig.
We need to go over on the river with Miles on his boat and go bow fishing.
You want to call him right now?
We can.
Speaking of that, and I can say this because I don't think many people from Wellington listen. If you do,
thank you.
No.
Oh.
If you do, don't go where I'm going to tell you. So Tucker, speaking of old Tuck, we're sitting outside last night. He's riding his bike around and he comes back up the road and he says, I followed a man into the woods on a motorcycle. And I'm like, well, Tucker, first off, like, you can't do that. Like, what if he was going to kill you? Like, you have no idea. I don't know who this guy is. Don't know who you're talking about. And he's like, and there was a really cool path. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? And so we walked down there, just right down the road, down to this patch of woods.
Yep, I know which one you're talking about.
And sure enough, there's a mowed path, like a cut path into the woods. And I'm like, when did this get here?
Mm-hmm.
So he takes me back through there, and there's this big area like mowed and cut out with a fire pit and everything. I'm like, this is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull up Google Maps. Miles Miller owns it. And I'm like, So I call Miles and I'm like, hey, I just discovered this. Can I use it? Like, can I come back here and like hang out, start a fire? And he's like, I'm actually selling that to this other gentleman. I'm not going to say his name because if you do listen from Wellington, he's like, I'm selling that to this other gentleman. And I didn't know what he was doing back there. He just asked me if he could cut some stuff down. And I'm like, cool. Well, then come to find out, I knew the guy who he was selling it to. He's one of our neighbors. And that's who was on the motorcycle that Tucker followed. And so I don't know the guy, but I know him well enough to be like, oh, Tucker, followed him. So I went over there to his house and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to make a cool hangout area back there. But I tell you all to tell you this, Tucker just followed a man into the woods.
I'm not surprised.
He just sees a guy on a motorcycle and is like,
it wasn't the neighbor that he was
following that guy
that he was working on what was he working on when you had to pay for a replacement window or something?
No, that was Wilmoth. I can say that, Mr. Wilmoth.
Mr. Wilmoth.
And I think I've told that story on the podcast before, but Tucker comes up, he's out shooting his BB gun. And,
that's what it was.
And I've got a whole bunch of 3D targets in the backyard. And so he normally just shoots the targets, but there was a bunch of blackbirds out in the field. And so he started chasing birds. So he comes up and gets me, says, Dad, I shot some glass. And I'm like, what do you mean you shot some glass? And so I start following him back behind the field and I'm like, where is this glass that you shot? And sure enough, we get close enough to Mr. Wilmoth's house and that whole back glass is just shattered out. And I'm like, so for those of you, Mr. Wilmoth runs our Pheasants Forever chapter here. So he's a big bird hunter. And so I call him and he's like, well, you can't blame a kid for trying to shoot a bird.
Yeah.
That was the only thing
He's
he said.
good. He's good people.
But no, it's the gentleman on the corner over here with the big, nice garage. Doors are always open. He's always working on, he's got a nice Jeep and a nice motorcycle. And you would know him probably, but just built a really cool area. But Tucker just follows this guy into the woods, just sees a guy on a motorcycle and it's like, I'm going with that guy.
I like his look. I like the
looks of this guy.
Yeah.
No, he liked the motorcycles, what he liked.
Right. Yeah.
If you ever want to lure my son, it's not going to be candy. It's going to be like motorcycles or tractors or something.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I think I've actually already kind of come up with the idea. Lauren bought a house. Dylan and I he lives on one side of this creek that we're talking about, and I live on the other. And by the way, the crow flies, what is it? Probably 300 yards, 400 yards?
Yeah, maybe.
But
you've probably got some of my arrows in your backyard.
And vice versa.
I launched one the other day and
I did find one of yours. Remember?
Really?
Where was I at? I remember I found one and I was like,
it's not good.
Oh, it was over. Well, there's a track in between.
That's what's worse. That's why it's not good.
I'm going to leave it there because there's some other reasons why it's worse too. But
yeah.
But no, I found one and it was before
you knew me.
Well, I mean, we knew.
Well, yeah.
We knew of each other, but we hadn't.
We probably didn't know I lived here though.
I didn't know. I had no idea you lived here.
Yeah.
But I found this really nice arrow that I knew was a really nice arrow, and it was not. And I'm thinking, oh crap! I mean,
so one time I come home and in like the front garden area of our house, there's one of my arrows sticking in the yard, and I'm like, where did that come from? So somebody found it and knew in the neighborhood enough to know it's that stupid redneck down the street that's always shooting his bow.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, this is getting bad. Like I know how I lost the arrow. A squirrel really tempted me, but it was up in a limb. And so I shot up, and this is in the front yard, which is a horrible idea. And shot at the squirrel, and the arrow went flying for decades. And
yeah, they will.
But somebody found it and knew well enough to know, oh, it's that redneck down the street that has his truck that says Archery on it, and come and stuck it in my front yard.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing back my arrow, by the way.
Yeah. My wife and I were down behind our house on that side of the creek where the track is. And I found that arrow. And this, I think, was even before we opened the shop. And I was like, I know I hunt and everything. So I knew enough to know that that's a pretty nice arrow.
That's a nice arrow.
That's a nice arrow.
That's pretty neat.
So my wife, of course, she's like, can you use it? And I'm like, no, I can't. It's just one arrow.
Yeah.
I don't know what the weight is.
What do you think, ding dong?
Oh, how dare her even think something like
Jeez.
that. So then later on, we met whatever. I came over, started hanging out or whatever. Saw your arrow rigs, and I was like, I bet that's your arrow.
One of those.
I found one of those arrows. Then you came over to the house and shot that one time, and I gave it back to you.
Yeah. I hate it when I find an arrow out in the backyard from like 2 years ago, and I'm like, I don't shoot that arrow. No,
I don't shoot that arrow. Yeah, I got wrapped.
But I looked for days for that arrow and couldn't find it.
Well, I lost one in your backyard last year, like 3 of them.
Speaking of that, Tucker found an arrow today. We were walking back.
We sound like we're not very good shots.
Well, if you shoot enough, you're going to miss arrows. But we were walking back today, and he's like, hey, an arrow, and pulls it out. And it was one of my current recurve arrows. So I was like, yes, score. So he pulls it out of the ground, and of course the field tip was all rusted. So I unscrewed it and threw it away, but I got an arrow back. Like, that's cool.
Nice.
Guys, if you have been around archery much at all, then you've probably heard the name Lancaster. And for good reason. Lancaster Archery is well known worldwide, and they have an incredible reputation worldwide. Why? Because they're archery experts on all things archery, from bow hunting to 3D shooting, from recurves to compounds. If it's archery, they not only sell the products, but they know the products. Guys, Lancaster is your one-stop shop for all things bear archery, every compound, recurve, all the equipment. But outside of bear, they have everything you need, from arrows and broadheads to bow building equipment, everything. Guys, Lancaster Archery is a name that you can absolutely trust. They put out some of the best information that you can find just about anywhere. So I would highly encourage you to not only shop at LancasterArchery.com because you can trust in the products you're buying because they know about the products that you're buying, but also I would highly encourage you to check out all of their resources, not only on their website, but on their YouTube channel, because they are a wealth of knowledge on all things archery. So guys, check out Lancaster Archery. They're your one-stop shop, not only for all of the equipment that you could ever possibly need that's archery related, but also all of the information that you would ever need that is archery related. LancasterArchery.com. Go check them out.
Yeah, that track back there, or well, not the track, but Lauren bought a house clear at the other end of the creek, so on our side,
I didn't know.
right by the roundabout.
Okay.
So, and I know everybody that lives in that, the houses between us, and so with all the grandkids now, we've got three of them on the ground.
We're gonna have a couple wild ones. I can tell you that.
Oh, I know. Well, we've already got.
I don't have much hope for Blake's kids.
Sissy is the definition of a wild one.
Yeah.
She and she's hard-headed and beautiful and just absolutely all around awesome. But man, she's hard-headed.
She's a wild one.
She's going to be 2 here in a couple weeks.
Dude, I could tell Tucker stories for hours, and just honestly, I should probably start a podcast called like Outdoors with Tuck or something, and just share all the stupid stuff he does. And
Sissy is her name's Briston. We call her Sissy. She's in the like 100+ percentile for height and weight. She's going to be 2. She weighs
74 pounds.
No, they just told me last night. I think she weighs 37 pounds.
That's like what Tucker weighs.
I'm not exaggerating. I'm not saying my grandkid could beat your kid up. She's tough.
Let's do it.
We could.
Is that illegal?
I don't know. I don't think it's only illegal if you bet on it.
Oh,
but I will bet.
Yeah, we're betting on it. Bad thing is I'm probably going to put my money on your granddaughter.
I'm telling you right now, that little girl is not scared of anything. She'll literally go into the house and find a black hiding spot and then wants you to come find her. And when you find her, she wants you to scare the heck out of her. Like literally like, rah! And she just
see that those kind of kids scare me the most. Like
she wants to be thrown in the air as high as you can throw 37 pounds. She wants to be thrown higher than that. Her dad drives race cars. She wants to get in the race car. Loud things don't scare her.
Like legitimately, those kids scare me. And Tucker was the same way. Like I remember one time I was downstairs on a podcast and I hear everybody screaming like bloody murder. And I was like to the point where I was like, hey, I'm going to have to pause this. Like, I'll be right back. And ran upstairs. So I thought like somebody legitimately like broke in and was like killing my family. And then there's Tucker with a big old 6-foot snake in his hands, like just caught it. And it was in the house. Like it had crawled in the house somehow. I don't know where or how, but got into the house. And so Chrissy discovers this. And so she screams, all the girls are screaming. And so Tucker's like, oh, snake, and grabs it. And I'm like, those kids scare me though, because it's like,
that's Sissy to a T.
Like you have to be scared of things. Like,
man,
I want you to be scared of things. Like
she loves to be scared. Like you can scare her and she'll jump.
Yeah.
But then she smiles and laughs and she's like,
so she's a freak.
Yeah. She does the hand signal for more. She wants to do more.
So she's a freak.
Yeah. She's just crazy. Love her to death. She's so stinking cute. But anyway,
back to Kelly. No,
back to Mayfield.
Back to Mayfield, America, 6 miles north of Rome.
Yeah, down in the Corbin, Perth, and Caldwell area. That's another one of his.
Yeah.
But I've told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to make a dirt track. We got to get the kids, quads or dirt bikes or something, so they can get back, back and forth from our house to her house. It's only probably quarter mile.
If that.
I think there's 12 houses or 13 houses in between, but they're big lots.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna make a track back there, and then that way the kids can. And my wife's already told Lauren she's gonna buy them all ponies.
Nice. So I did want to ask you. Right now, you've been focusing a lot. Powder and String is a big distributor for all season blinds and feeders.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been focusing a lot on setting blinds and feeders.
Yes.
A lot of summer prep work. Which just did a podcast a couple weeks ago with Matt Jennings on summer prep work. Did a podcast with Jim Willems before that on what all he's doing for summer prep work. And I love talking with guys. Like, what are you
Mhm.
currently working on for your future deer season? Which, by the way, I'm still waiting on my shooting sticks. They're down in one of your blinds. Next time you're there, make sure and grab them. I think you already got them, but you're like, these are nice,
I
dude.
never know.
They might be in the shop. You might have hung them for sale.
Try to sell them. I got to pay.
Jiminy
Got to pay the bill somehow.
Jiminy Christmas. Anyways, now you're doing this for customers. Like, customers are buying these blinds and feeders. So when you go in to a piece of ground, are most of the customers that are buying these feeders like, this is the general area I want it? This is where I want the blind? Or do you go in and look at this ground and, consult and say like, hey, this is where?
It can kind of go both ways. So that's the next element, if you will, to powder and string with blinds. We kind of have envisioned and talked about incorporating some of our pro staff guys and doing some consulting, if you will, and also some property management, as well as my wife and I both have our real estate license. So we're also going to be looking at adding, sales as well to that. We're in the process of getting set up with a different broker that'll be more in tune with that.
Why don't you go with like Mossy Oak Properties or something?
Well, we're looking at different options and leave that. I'm just going to leave it at that right now, but it's definitely something that's on the front burner, if you will.
Yeah.
With that, but to answer your specific question, it's kind of both. A lot of time, well, sometimes depending on the customer, they could be in another state and they have the property here,
right?
So they're sending us, an Onyx, pin, and so then we're placing it. Sometimes we're, replacing another, company's blind. They're upgrading. No shameless plug, but the way I kind of came about becoming a dealer with All Seasons Feeders was a very, very good friend of mine, Kenny Fisher. He's a doctor, and he calls me, and I just started the shop, and he's like, "Hey, can you get these feeders?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I can look into it, whatever." So I looked into it, and it was a pretty good chunk for the buy-in to get it. And I was like, "Man, it just doesn't make sense for me to do this." And he's like, "Well, why don't I just, I want a bunch of feeders. I'll buy them through you. I'll give you all the money for the buy-in, and then you just pay me back when you sell whatever's left." So I was like, kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So I got them, and when I got set up, then I noticed that they also do blinds. Well, then I started pricing their blinds compared to other blinds that are out there, and I'm not in any way talking down on any other company's blind,
right.
But their blinds were a little bit more expensive, and so I was just like, I just don't see that being anything that's going to be marketable for us. Well, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that the prices for these blinds are including the stand, including the platform, including the chair, the stairs, not the stand, but the platform and the stairs and all that. And so when you priced all that in, they were very comparable, a little bit higher, but very comparable. But the quality is just second to none. I mean, there's nothing else out there like it. There's some that are close, but nothing like them. The only downfall, if you will,
you've obviously never heard of a muddy pop-up blind.
Well, maybe not, but
where I can play in the dirt.
Yes, yeah. If you're looking for that, this is definitely not the way to go.
That is what playing in the dirt is a funny joke, but people ask me like, how do you get your son to in a ground blind? You got deer 20 yards from you. And I clear out, I make it bare dirt, take a rake and rake it up, and I let him take his monster trucks. And he just literally sits in the ground and he'll build little ramps and play with his monster trucks. And I'll tell him, like, hey, we got deer out in front of us. Don't, stop for a second. And then when I can, I'll stand them up. And but yeah, people ask me all the time. That's what I do. I make it bare dirt and I let them literally take dirt toys and play in the dirt.
Yeah. So these blinds here are just the only downfall to them. If you could pick one or find one, would be that in order to set them up, you got to have some type of machinery. They're just heavy. They're over 1,000 pounds. So it's not like you're going to be going, and setting these up with 4 guys, in a pickup truck. It's just, they're way bigger than that. But other than that, so as we started getting the blinds, venturing, expanding off into the blinds, then we started having a lot more customers. Matter of fact, just today we had a customer that ordered 3 feeders from out of state, and I had another one earlier in the week. And this is kind of the busy time of the year for feeders and stuff, for the very reason you said. Everybody's trying to get the feeders and the blinds out for this next hunting season coming up. But I would say at least half of our sales for these blinds and feeders are from out of state hunters. So some of them will come actually up to the property that they have here, and we'll go out with them. Some of them are very adamant about right where they want it. This is it, period, the end. And there's nothing up for discussion. And it's not, they're buying it. It's up to them. But then some of them are open and they want to know, what's your thought? What do you think? And of course, at that point, I can give them my 2 cents, if you will. And
the reason I ask is because I think it's a big misconception of like, well, I'm just going to place the feeder and they're going to come to the food.
Negative.
Like, big negative. You still have to largely consider access to and from that blind.
Yep.
But also, if you put it in an area where deer are already, then they don't have to have the learning curve of finding that food. And you don't really want to change their natural pattern. Like, I don't want to put a feeder and just say, well, they're going to come to it. I don't want to have to change the way those deer travel.
Well, when you say they'll come to it, I would go out to venture to say maybe at some point, in a 365-day year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, does every deer in that territory, eventually will they come to a feeder that has food out? If that feeder was full and dispersing, whatever means, would you get 100% saturation? I would say maybe.
Well, what's crazy to me is
I would say a large majority.
And really what made me fall into that trap is what made me realize that's so false. Like, that if I just throw a feeder out, doesn't matter, that's where they're coming. Is that property in South Haven we went to shoot that coyote on.
Mm-hmm.
I had a feeder there. And I set another camera up just, I don't know, maybe 400 yards away.
Mm-hmm.
But it was off. It was on another travel corridor. And I started seeing another buck like clockwork using that trail, but he would never come down and go to that feeder.
Mm-hmm.
Never one time saw him on that feeder, but he was up 400 yards like clockwork. And so that got my wheels turning. But then I had a conversation with Warren Holder from Raised Hunting, and he was talking about his idea of deer zones. And I'm like,
just going to say that.
I'm like, what do you mean? Like, explain that to me. And he's like, and his ideology is that, and I do agree with it, especially after that. Like, there are just borders like that a deer out. We're not talking deer in the rut. Everything goes up the deer in the rut, but I do believe it even extends in the rut. Like, I believe there's areas where a deer doesn't go during the rut, even during the rut. But especially outside the rut, deer have core areas and home ranges, and they just simply don't leave that area.
I would 100% agree with that.
And the border can only be 100 yards from there. Like, that other buck was only 400 yards from that feeder, but would never come to it. And the same is true down in Oklahoma, where I hunt at Liberty Ranch. I mean, they have feeders all over that place. We don't hunt the feeders, but there are deer that just don't go to that feeder. Like, they're not going to, because it's outside of their core area.
Well, I've always said that, and I've heard, I didn't come up with this myself. I'm repeating it. That's most of your hunting
knowledge.
I mean, the vast majority, at least in my experience, is all.
Speaking of that, hold on. Before you go on, here's a rant. I'm not going to name the influencer that shared a piece of information, but a very famous influencer shared a piece of information, a tech tip, if you will. And like, the amount of comments that were like, you're just regurgitating information. Well, we all are.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying it maybe a little bit differently so you understand it, but like, we all learned this from somewhere. Like, quit thinking that I'm going to come up with some brand new idea and it's going to change everybody's mind. And
that's the cool part about, there's pluses and minuses to this technology and having a phone in our hand and all that. And, one of the things, I do construction and I, have houses that I've bought and flipped. And, my dad is a woodworker. I a lot of times, my algorithms on my, whatever my reels or whatever you call those, the video shorts, they'll start getting into construction stuff. And all of a sudden you start learning. Just yesterday, I learned one I didn't have any idea. I was like, oh my gosh. So I send those to, other people. That's the cool part about it. But like you're saying, most of this we're just repeating stuff. I mean, it's something new. Technology has to come out. You're not, there's no, and I would tell you, just like anything in life, don't reinvent the wheel.
Right.
There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Try to find something and then tweak it just a little bit. You can always do some little tweaks and stuff. But one thing that I've always said is, and around Kansas, around this part of Kansas anyway, Wellington's the wheat capital of the world. And until probably the last 15 or maybe 20 years, we were wheat and that's it. And there was I can tell you that, going back to the mid to late 90s up into the early 2000s, this area of Kansas did not have, we had good quality deer. It was still Kansas, still the land of Oz, but they weren't as big as they are here. And I distinctly remember that because I went to school at Kansas State University up in Manhattan. And
Jiminy Christmas. You had to throw that in there, didn't you?
Go State. Anything else you'd like me to add about the amazing University of
beat us in the freaking World Series? I know that.
Yeah, you were Mr. Confident over here.
I don't know if I told you this. I had a K-State guy with me watching that game.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole time he was like, we don't stand a chance. We suck. You guys are going to donkey stomp us.
Guy. I told you, didn't I? Yeah.
I'm also going to a Texas Longhorn Arkansas football game with a Texas guy.
Oh, I've never, when I've explained to people who you are, tried to describe you, I've never said smart.
It's going to be fun, but it's in Arkansas. So at least like if he gets jumped, I can like help, like not help him, like help the mob that's jumping him.
Yeah.
No, he's a pastor friend of mine in Wichita. And we were sitting there looking at tickets, and before they got crazy, like, because here's what's going to happen. If either team are even decent, those tickets are going to be $1,200 a piece.
Yeah.
And so before the season started, like before anybody saw, which we're going to suck. But before anybody saw, like, are either team going to be decent, we went ahead and bought the tickets. They were still stupid expensive, but it was one of those on the whim, like, this might be we're never going to be able to afford to go in Texas. Like, then tickets are already expensive. And
I hope Texas goes like 2-10 this year. And OU does 1-11. But that's just my own thing.
Again, I don't want to get off.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. Here's what I'm afraid of, though. And this was not meant to be a sports podcast, but here we are. It's the beauty of podcasts. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about.
This is true.
I'm afraid moving to the SEC is going to be really good for Texas and really bad for OU.
I don't know. I think Texas is the biggest. I mean, look at Kansas State, obviously, because I know them, and I'm no pun, no shame in giving them a little plug here, but we've had a grand total of 1 5-star recruit in football. That was this year. We got a tight end, and possibly you could go back to.
Was that Avery kid not a 5-star?
No. And we also have the running back that went to Notre Dame, Colorado. It was Dylan Edwards from Derby. He transferred back.
Yeah.
Which I hate the portal and all that. But anyway, but we got a tight end this year from Salina, and he's the first 5-star. But Texas, year in, year out, and Oklahoma as well.
Still your 5-stars.
Oh, no, not still. We don't ever have a chance. Like, that's just is what it is.
Yeah.
K-State's always been able to, we get picked in the bottom of the Big 12, if not, the last of the Big 12. And year in, year out, we always finish in the top half, if not winning the Big 12, go to a bowl game. And we've always done it on hard work, tough kids, unrecruited walk-ons.
Farm kids.
Yep.
Wheat farmers.
Yep. But Texas gets 10, 15, 20 5-star recruits year in, year out. And year in, year out, over the last, 15 years, I don't know how many times they've won the Big 12, but I'm going to say it's less than 3.
Also, I'm calling it now, the first misstep that little quarterback makes, which is funny because he's going to be on the cover of the new 2025 NCAA game. First misstep he makes, he's out, and what's his name's in.
I don't even know.
And he's going to take over.
I don't even know. I'm done talking about football on this. What were we talking about?
Kansas wheat turning into bigger deer.
Kansas, up around Manhattan, the Flint Hills, up there, they've got big deer.
Mhm.
And it's just, and not that we don't here. We have big deer here.
Not the ones I killed, but
I didn't say Dylan has big deer. I said we,
yeah,
and I wasn't including you in that.
I know.
But I bring that up because it has to do with habitat, and there's so many reasons. There's so many things. Genetics is all kinds of stuff that add to that, and that's a whole other podcast in and of itself. But where I was going with that is we have a lot of corn and row crops, milo, stuff like that, but specifically corn. You get a cornfield, and if we have a particularly wet winter, or wet summer, fall, those big deer, they're going to sit out in the middle of that cornfield and bed down and eat and drink all right there.
And there's nothing you're going to do to get them to a feeder.
No, nothing. They don't need to.
Especially if if you've got beans and then a neighboring corn and then milo, and then here's the worst is when they cut the corn and it's all loose on the ground. Like, you're never going to get them to come to your feeder.
I mean, they could, but that's the thing is, it's like, I think I know there's been studies out there and I've seen some of them, but I think all animals are inherently lazy. And I don't mean like lazy as in
they take the easiest
right, because
road.
Especially for them, it's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And it's calories. It's, food in, calories burnt. So, and they already know that they got a winter coming up. So as much as they can store, they're going to do whatever they can to store it. So they're not going to move if they don't have to move.
And if a deer can graze, like, rather than sitting at a feeder and just eating it out of a pipe, deer want to graze. Like, they want to do that. And that's why, like, I tell people, like, broadcast it out. Like, don't, if you're going to buy a feeder, don't buy one of the gravity feeders. Buy one that disperses it so that the deer can naturally.
Yeah. And I also think that you kind of hit on it a little bit when you talked about placement of the blind and then also being able to get in and out of the blind. I heard somebody one time saying, I don't remember who it was, but I think he's onto something, but he talks about deer will go, especially during rut, they're going to go work scrapes and everything. Well, if they can walk into a little 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 acre field and they can immediately see all the deer that are out there, they're going to see, Sally and Bonnie and, Susie and Patty and all these does that are out there. They know, that they live with them every day.
Yeah.
So they know which deer are out there. It's no different than us walking into
a restaurant.
Yeah, a restaurant. Immediately,
there's Kip.
There's Dylan. So immediately we're going to see it. And so that deer's cruising. He's trying to cover ground. So the more deer that he can see, he already knows that, he's already bred Sally and Susie. So, the other two aren't, I saw them yesterday. So they're not going to be ready. So if you can create stops within this, but still make your blind work, then or corridors, then
they have to come.
Yeah, they have to come check the area out. So there's a lot to it. Just because, people are buying blinds or just buying feeders, and don't get me wrong, I think it's a tool and it needs to be used correctly. There's a lot of different tools that are out there, but feeders is one of them. And the other thing I think that's really big is I think feeding the deer year round. They, during hunting season, if you're just putting supplement out or corn out during that, will you get deer to come to it? Sure. To an extent, and have big deer been shot over them? Yes. And then are there people out there that are going to say no big deer is going to come to a pile of corn? I can tell you, I know personally of probably 5 deer that were
over
200 inch deer that were shot. And I know for a fact that, I know of.
And by the way, before you keyboard warriors say like, oh, it wasn't 200, like these are legitimate.
100,
200s.
Yeah. That's one of the things, this area, this state of Kansas, land of Oz, we are blessed with deer. And I always tell people, my wife, she's traveled for her jobs in the past. She's done a lot of traveling. We go to, a lot of times she's in Texas. I love to go down to Texas and look at guys' pictures of bass, because we don't have bass. You catch a 4-pound bass, 5-pound bass around here, you're doing something.
Right.
They go on their lunch break to the park and they're catching 7 and 8, 10 pounders. And I'm just like, what in the world? Like,
Florida.
Yeah. So where they're wanting to see my whitetail pictures, I'm wanting to see their bass pictures. And so then you get to talking. And I've always said around here, if you don't shoot a 180-inch deer, don't be going and trying to be saying Dylan shot a big one. Dylan shot a monster. I mean, around here, if that deer is not laying in the back of the truck and you don't see the other side of, horns sticking up.
Why are you putting me down like this, dude?
I thought you did shoot a big one last year.
That one over your head's the one I shot last year.
I was just saying Dylan, as in not Dylan Ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other Dylan Ray in town. I remember back, and well, actually, let me share this with you real quick. Here's the key way to kill a big deer in a farm state. And I don't do it, but I know a lot of guys who do, and they kill monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Just buy the acre of food in front of that blind. So if you have this area set up and it's on the edge of a bean field, cornfield, whatever, just tell the farmer, like, hey, whatever you're getting, I want to pay for that acre. And if it's beans, leave it standing. Just don't cut it. Leave it there. Because in the winter, dude, oh my gosh, that little 1 acre will have crazy amounts of deer in it. If it's corn, just say cut it, but leave it laying. Like cut it, but don't pick it up.
Yeah.
And then come winter, dude, when all the other food's gone and there's just winter.
I don't know about the second part,
up.
because if you leave the corn, I mean, as we all know, corn, you got coons
but like I said, it's not in one.
Right.
It's all dispersed out. It's all,
Yeah.
And that is the problem, is people just pour a pile of corn. Well, coons can work through that in the night.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had so many guys be like, oh, dude, my whole corn. I put out 100 pounds of corn. It was gone in 2 days. And I'm like, a deer might not have even touched that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, that's one of the things I tell people a lot of times with regards to these feeders is, it's going to pay for itself in a year or two.
Yeah. Saving you money.
Oh yeah, for sure. And now you're really truly, because I mean, we've done, not only am I a hunter, but I have a business. And so I want to make sure that this is there's a longevity to it. And I don't want to sell junk. So I've used some of these feeders myself, and I've got trail cameras that I put out.
You going to start selling corn anytime soon?
We're working on that too.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm trying.
Have you seen those?
Yep.
You've seen them.
Mm-hmm.
Put one on the corner over there.
Don't even say it out loud. I'm working on it.
Dude, like,
they're not cheap. Let me just say that. You heard me say it.
I wouldn't think they are.
They're not inexpensive.
For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, and I've only seen one in person one time, but it's just a corn disposal. Like, you walk up, scan your credit card, put in, 500 pounds, whatever, and it just dumps in the bed of your truck.
Yeah, we're working on the one where if I can get it done the way I want it to have corn, but they'll also be able to choose between corn or protein feed or supplement, some type of a protein supplement type feed.
Are you gonna have a discount code system on that where I can just
here we go
come up and punch like Kip's friend and I get it like half price?
No.
Okay. Dang it. But that's a brilliant idea. And again, but the problem is so many dudes just pile it up right there. Coons can work through that in the night. Like, dispose it out, like disperse it out.
When I'm doing mine, people ask me, I usually set it for, a time in the morning and a time in the evening that still fit within shooting hours. And I, for the most part, run something out of that feeder
year round.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a few times where, I get busy or whatever, and I'll be off for a couple, I might have 2 or 3 weeks maybe where there's not some kind of food or something in there. But for the most part, between me and Blake, we try to keep something going out there all the time. And I don't really adjust the times, because even in the winter, I mean, I'm throwing like 7 seconds, 5-10 seconds, something like that. Depends on how many deer are around. But I'm not putting a ton of corn out at all. Or a ton of protein and stuff like that. But I think that, going back to that, I think that it's, in my opinion, and this is just from experience, I think the most important time to supplement deer is basically from about January, late.
I'd even say December.
I was going to say late December, like, the 15th or after, but definitely January, clear through
when the fawns drop.
Yeah. Well, I think you go clear through like right now.
Yeah.
Because And I would say that it kind of changes. Like if you got the ability and the luxury of being able to get to your feeders, what I'm trying to put out, I'm putting supplement out at a different time, because this time of year the deer have all the food that they can eat. Like the fact that you're dropping corn or protein or any of that stuff, it's just an additional buffet. They've got soybeans, they've got all the green alpha, they got everything that nature can provide for them is there, and everything that they need. My goal is to just supplement that. And so I want to give them additional nutrients to potentially add additional mass, bone, and health, to the deer, all the deer, the whole herd, not just the bucks.
And that's what, like, I think so many people miss that. There are two really key times for me when deer needs your supplements more than ever, and that's bitter, harsh winters. When food is scarce, they need that to survive. And then when fawns are dropping. I mean, if you've ever had a wife that's had a kid, they eat a lot when they're nursing. They have to. They're producing food for an infant as well. And the same is true with deer. Like when they're nursing 2 fawns, they need to be bringing in more nutrients. They can give it out to the fawns. And so many people miss that. They just, October 10th, they go out and start dumping corn so they can kill a deer there.
Yeah, and I think that again, in my opinion, can it be done? Do I know of 200-inch deer that were shot under that exact circumstance? I mean, I know of one that I know the individual very well, and he flat told me, and I know him. Let me just say this: I know him well enough that I know where he shot this deer at.
Yeah,
and he's told me where he shot the deer at, and the stand that he shot the deer at, and I know the time that he shot the deer at. And I'm like, you never should have shot that deer at that time. There's no reason I deer. And he said, I kid you not, this deer came
dumped corn.
I dumped corn, and this deer made a beeline across a 200-yard field, 200 yards across this field, and came to this pile. Like, and that's just stuff that you'll, for obvious reasons, there's a lot of hunters that will say that a deer that's 200 inches will never come to a pile of corn during the day because it's just such an anomaly. I agree with that, but they will do it.
Yeah.
But I think that September, October, November, dumping corn on the ground, just during those times, you're I'm not going to say you're wasting your money, but
to me, it's selfish. I mean, you're only worried about killing the deer. You're not worried about actually truly helping.
True statement. Yeah.
You're not worried about herd health at that point. Like if that's all you're doing, you just want a deer to come there so you can shoot it.
Yeah.
Now guys, listen, and I'm not even a big hunt over bait guy. I don't find it fun. What I find fun is like decoying deer, calling deer,
100%,
getting deer to come in. So don't just listen to this and be like, oh, Dylan just hunts over bait.
No, 100%.
Guys, if you're a traditional archer and you have not checked out Three Rivers Archery, what are you waiting for? Three Rivers Archery is your one-stop shop for all things traditional archery. They have the largest in-stock selection of traditional archery equipment anywhere. Same-day shipping, very, very, very knowledgeable. Listen, I use Three Rivers all the time. If I've got a question on tuning, if I've got a question on broadheads, if I've got a question on brace height or anything like that, I use Three Rivers for everything. They know the products because they use the products. Three Rivers Archery is by far the gold standard when it comes to traditional archery. So guys, if you're just getting into traditional archery, I would encourage you to use Three Rivers as a resource for knowledge and understanding and growing and learning, and as a place to get all those products that you're going to be needing as you take this journey.
I also find it interesting that you'd kind of coming full circle to what you'd asked earlier about with blind placement, where to put feeders and stuff. Is I grew up before Onyx, topographical mass. I mean, we're in Kansas.
You're old, bro.
I am old, but we're in Kansas. There's no, I mean, it's as flat as a floor, especially where we're at. You know that. I mean, it's flat. There's no real elevation whatsoever. I mean, it might be 10 feet, 15 feet.
That's why I have to shoot my bow off my roof.
Exactly. I mean, it's flat here. But so you can't use topographical maths here to try and figure out pinch points and stuff like that. You have to, get a visual from the sky like we have with Onyx now, which is, it's an amazing tool. I remember going to people that were pilots and going, hey, will you take me up in your airplane? I got some ground I want to go hunt. So I could see it from the sky. So I could look at the way the land laid, where there was a fence or where there was a bunch of trees that pinched, looking for pinch points or looking for.
You're the reason there's rules in Alaska for hunting.
Well, I wouldn't shoot them that day. I was looking for pinch points so I could for
Right.
stand placement.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I do see now with hunters, especially younger hunters. And I mean, there's no reason for them to have that kind of knowledge because they have the tools at their fingertips with OnX or even Google Maps that's free. But when I go out to place a stand, I kind of look, that's the first thing I look for is, all right, where's the corridor? Where's the pinch point? Where's this at? Where's the bedding area? I don't want to, I definitely don't want to sit anything close to that, think of the wind direction, all that stuff. So, there's a lot more to hunting than just putting a pile of corn out. Now, can things like, this one I told you about? Yeah, it can happen. But, I'm going to tell you that the people that kill big deer on a regular basis are not hunting over corn.
Yeah.
They're supplementing.
Right. And that's what, like in Oklahoma, I mean, we run feeders. Like I said, there's probably 20 feeders on that place. We don't ever hunt over the feeders. I don't want to kill them on the feeder.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we don't even run them during hunting season. Like, because again, what you're talking about, like, come November, they're not worried about it anyways. Like,
that's right.
I mean, they're all only worried about getting laid. And so we run the feeders, all year long up until just about hunting season, turn them off. And then,
well, and if you're not hunting over the feeders, then there is that outside chance that feeder could attract or pull that deer away from, because just like Murphy's law, just like we're sitting here saying, it doesn't work. It could.
Yeah.
But with hunting, that's why they call it hunting instead of killing. Like they call it fishing instead of catching. Everything we're talking about is, you're trying to position yourself and give yourself the best chances that you possibly can in order to harvest an animal.
Because we like to kill stuff.
I like to eat stuff.
At the end of the day, I just like to kill stuff.
Well, I'm 0% vegan. And so.
Yeah. I wouldn't know that because you don't rep the 0% vegan shirt.
But well, you didn't give me one. I didn't even know where to get it until you just said this.
It's whatever. Speaking of where to get it, where can they find Powder and String Outfitters?
Powderandstring.com, powderstring.com. That's our website.
You spelled that real well.
Yep.
You're good at that.
Gunpowder and Bowstring is the name, but Powder and String. You can also get there with Powder A&D String, but Powder String. We're on YouTube. I think that's at Powder String. Instagram at Powder String.
TikTok.
We just launched a TikTok.
Not on Facebook.
For those of you out there listening still.
Liberal freaks.
It is the most frustrating and infuriating thing in the entire world.
Let me just say this too, and I alluded to it on Facebook briefly, but hunters need to support each other on social media.
Amen. We talk about that on our podcast all the time.
Because nobody else is going to. Like, Facebook is going to do everything they can.
I'm going to get on my soapbox for
do it.
Just a second.
Let it go, bud.
For those of you that are listening, we, myself included, we have to understand that there is humongous forces out there that are against our way of life. They don't like guns. They don't like bows. They don't like killing. They don't like fishing. They don't like the outdoors. They want you. They literally. There was a study that was done by the Farm Bureau of Arizona in 2005 when there was a ballot initiative for dealing with hogs in birthing crates. So that way they basically it was a humane way for hogs to give birth, and then it kind of holds them upright. So that way when they go to lay down, they don't lay on their pigs and their piglets and kill them. And it failed. The vote went to where they had to be freestanding. They couldn't be in these birthing crates. And it goes against everything because there's more the reasons why farmers do that it's not to be inhumane to the pig. It's because they were killing their piglets. So the very point that this law passed was completely against what it was trying to create. It created more death to the animals than had they let the farmers who are stewards of the animal, the solutions that they'd come up with. They came up with that solution. They didn't want to spend. The farmers, it's a business to them. They don't want to go out and spend the extra money on these birthing crates that are going to cost them money to just because they're going to try. Well, just because it's going to be harder on the sow, and she's going to have to stand up longer, and it's just harder on her. So we're going to do that. That it just makes no sense. But Farm Bureau did this study that said that how many generations was it away from that voter having a family member that was raised on the farm. And they also took it a step further, I believe, and went in, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but with regards to is that person able to identify where that hamburger is coming from that they ate, or where that, that slice of bacon, or where that egg came from, or they can't. They literally believe that it came from the store.
Mm-hmm.
So some other stuff that's out there, the statistics, and it's right there. Peter Churchborn was on our podcast. I think you've had him before.
Yeah. Pete's legit.
Yeah. Don't remember the exact statistics, but I think we're currently under 20% of the population, maybe even under 15% of the population that are hunters, outdoorsmen, it's not own guns, but I think it's hunters. I think he said it was like 15%,
or even open to the idea of hunting. Like,
yeah, it's very ever so small. And those people that are against us are galvanized.
Mm-hmm.
They are in lockstep, 100%. They will get an initiative passed.
Yeah,
and they'll take a ballot. They'll take it.
They stand together.
They stand together. So just because you're a rifle hunter and not a bow hunter, or just because somebody else doesn't hunt the way that you will, and you don't think that they're doing it the right way or whatever, man, you need to understand that you are shooting yourself in the foot, no pun intended, by not supporting another hunter. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, I'm not saying stand up for a hunter that's unethical or that's breaking the laws and stuff like that.
Right.
And they give all of us a bad name. But we have got to stand together. And the other thing too is if one of these organizations, the Ducks Unlimited or the Rocky Mountain Elk Federation or NWTF or Pheasants and Quail Forever or Whitetails Unlimited or any of these, and Friends of the NRA, any of those organizations that are having a banquet in your town, go support it. Mm-hmm. Because just because you may not be a duck hunter, but it's a Ducks Unlimited event, believe you me, those conservation dollars will benefit you in a roundabout way. Right. For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. We have got to stay unified with regards to hunting. If we like this outdoor, we want to protect this outdoor.
Well, I heard it even said one time, Pope and Young was doing like a raise the paddle to conserve bear hunting in Kentucky. They were trying to shut down bear seasons in Kentucky, and somebody even said, I'm not a bear hunter and I don't hunt in Kentucky. And I'm like, fair enough, but I can promise you when they come for your state, you're going to want the people in Kentucky to stand up for you. And guys, I'm not even talking like don't negative comments. Like I'm not talking like if you see a guy shooting a compound, but you're a stick bow guy commenting saying, well, why don't you pony up and shoot a real bow? I'm not talking about not doing that. I'm talking about actually liking a post, commenting, saying, hey, good shooting, great deer, whatever. Show them the support on social media because these forces on social media are trying so hard to shut us down.
Well, let me just tell you.
And people in the outdoor industry need to support other people in the outdoor industry.
Amen.
And that's why, like, dude, I don't care what kind of bow you shoot. I want to like your post. I want to say, hey, good shooting, great shot.
I go out of my way more so now than ever, just because of my experience, to do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Even if it's just something of the nature, because I think just about anybody that's going to listen to this podcast knows, but I can give you some even more in-depth experience of what we had. We have a legitimate Facebook page. Currently it's unpublished.
Yeah.
and they're
Because you post guns and hunting.
and Facebook's community standards, straight from their community standards. I've taken the screenshots, shared them with you. You've seen them. It says the selling of guns and ammo on Facebook is prohibited by private individuals. However, businesses are allowed as long as they conduct business within the rules and laws and regulations. And then it even goes in, even past that, it even goes another step further. It says, for example, the selling of a firearm or ammunition. We are a gun shop. We're on Facebook as a gun shop. We are an FFL holder. We have never posted a price of a firearm or ammunition on Facebook. If we have, I can tell you it's an anomaly. It's a one-off. I don't think, I feel very confident I can stand and say, never have I had people ask me, how much is that gun that we've taken a picture of and shared? Yes, but we sent them a direct message. Even though their standards, their Facebook's own in writing standard says we can do that. We have not done that. And it got to a point where before they unpublished us, every single post that we made
was getting removed.
Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. Then you could, rebuttal it or whatever, or question it or ask, ask for a second opinion. And then they would let you. But then by that point in time, with the algorithms and the way the algorithms work,
it's already passed.
Yeah. Because it only looks at the first 30 or 45 minutes or 2 hours. And if you don't get a bunch of likes and stuff, then it gets no traction. And then and then even more than that, anything that has to do with 2A, gun, and I'm sure that archery's in there, but not quite as much, but I'm sure it's factored in there. The other thing is that there is no organic growth to a page or to a post. None, zero whatsoever. And it's even throttled back for somebody. So let's say that let's say Kelly Carter likes our Facebook. It's not going to show him as much of our stuff that is gun related stuff. And if we post too much gun related stuff, then it's even going to throttle him back for even the non-gun related stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we are gun related.
Yeah.
And hunting related. And it will throttle that back, but it will never just automatically pop up in somebody's feed for that has not liked our page. So the only growth that we have is
people commenting
or sharing that. And I say I'm saying we as in
a hunting community,
the hunting community. Yeah. I'm talking about your social influencers, the big names that but also the shops. And that being said, I still don't know how some of obviously money, but some of the ones that have really big money and really deep pockets, all of a sudden I'll see them pop up on my my Facebook. And I'm like, well, that's weird because I haven't liked their page, but all of a sudden they're able to advertise, but we can't. That's another thing. We can't even pay to advertise. And to take it in even another step further, that's just completely will just blow your mind is we have gone through every step to try and to petition it. We have reached out to our state senators, our state, at the national level. But the part that I still don't understand is somehow in the last 2 months, I've gotten paid by Meta for like 13 cents. And the last one was like $1.28 for content. And I'm like, well, you're going to pay me
for posting
stuff. So something I had was this, but then you're also going to unpublish my page at the same time. So I don't know. It just is crazy, but I'm going to get off my soapbox. But I hope that at some point our Facebook, and that's the thing that's so frustrating is that
there's no answer.
There's no answer. And that's the other thing too, is there's no, you can't petition it. You can't call anybody. We've tried. I've reached out to
we tried to pay people.
Mm-hmm.
I had some Facebook reps in the industry that I knew of, and hey, I'll pay you to look at this. Like I called Garmin and people that have big reps, and like I'll pay your Facebook guys to look at this. And the Facebook guys like, yeah, nothing you can do. Like you got banned.
And I get that it's, I'm a very conservative person. I'm not wanting, any kind of.
But yet the Olympics can depict the stinking Last Supper with drag queens.
Mm-hmm. And it's all fine.
And it's all fine. and you can show it and share it as much as you want.
Mhm.
They're going to cram it down your throat, and they're going to, but I can't show. I got a post removed because I got a comment removed because I commented on somebody and said, good shot. They weren't shooting an animal, they were shooting a target. And I said, good shot. And it said, we've removed your comment.
It's sad that, and I can tell you as a business owner, again, not just owning this gun shop for the 3 years that we've had it, but the I don't even know what the right word is, but the tricky part of it is that the power that social media has, the advertising.
Mhm.
I mean, the closest thing that we ever had prior to social media was television. And to do even today, which I still don't understand how this is even a thing, but to do television advertisement, it's still
Ungodly amount of money.
ungodly amount of money. I mean,
Mhm.
thousands and thousands and thousands of
Yep.
dollars, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, sure is.
And for $40, you can get more traction on social media than you could for $2,000 worth of
TV.
ad. And so there's the in itself is the dilemma,
Yeah.
and why, I wish that it wasn't a thing. I wish that I didn't have to have it, but
It's a necessary evil.
It's I wouldn't say it's necessary, but it sure gives you, I mean, it's a tool, and it's a strong tool. And that's why they can, that's why Zuckerberg can have a multi-billion-dollar yacht that has a support yacht. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And yet not have a single phone number
For anybody.
I honestly don't know. I genuinely wonder if they're even, I mean, I'm sure they have a phone number, but has anybody ever seen a Facebook phone number? Like, I feel like if you put it out there on Facebook and you're like, here's a phone number
For all your problems.
Yeah.
Here's Zuckerberg's cell phone number.
Oh my God.
Hit him up. That's one that I would leak. I would leak it to people.
I think he probably
change it in like 4 minutes.
And he probably doesn't have, he probably doesn't have a cell phone for like what we do. He's somebody that watches his cell phone for him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to live that life.
Yeah, for sure.
No.
Guys, go check out Powder and String. But I say all that to say this, like, people on social media need your support. Like them, comment, not just my stuff, not just Kip stuff, anybody in the hunting industry. If you see them trying to grow a hunting related page, especially your local bow shops, your local gun shops, your local bait shops, doesn't matter. Share all their content. Like, even if you're not a fan of them, even if you don't shop with them, that is going to go so far. I would rather you share Kip's posts than spend money in Kip's store. And I say that in all honesty, because it is so impossible to grow on social media as a gun hunting related business. And I like I said, I mean, I work for Pope and Young. I mean, we should be able to grow. I mean, we're trying to do the good, and we can't do it because we kill stuff and we like killing stuff. So guys, share all the comment, share all the posts, like them, do all that good stuff to anybody in the hunting industry.
Yeah, any of them. They're all out there trying to make our life, this life that we like, this outdoor life, they're trying to expand on it.
Yeah.
Whatever their motive is. And yes, sure, some of them are doing it for money, and you got to have money, you got to eat,
Yeah.
And there's a reason why some of them are have the traction and others don't, is because they're good at it. So if they're good at it, why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want to support that person to be an advocate?
Yeah.
Out there for something that you have. Because let me just tell you, it is under attack.
Yeah.
It is actively under attack
on every front.
Every front. On the media front, on the social media front, on the 2A, in the courts, legislation, all the way around everywhere. And technology, mom and pop shops, they're few and far between.
Yeah.
And so any support that you can give to them, give it to them.
Guys, when it comes to hunting and being outdoors, I believe there's one product that I use more than anything. That's not my bow. That's not my boots. It's not my anything else other than a binocular harness. If I am outside doing anything outdoors, I've got a binocular harness on. Whether I'm shooting, whether I'm hanging tree stands, whether I'm out hiking, it doesn't matter. If I'm outdoors doing just about anything, I've always got my binocular harness. Alaskan Guide Creations does it and does it very, very well. I've been using these now for about 8 years, and I absolutely love them. The new system with all the magnets are really good, really accessible, very customizable. Guys, if you're in the market for a new binocular harness, I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to check out Alaskan Guide Creations because they are phenomenal.
Guys, we have truly talked about everything. So anybody should be able to get something out of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.
Thanks for having me on, Dylan.